back to another video. Today I'm wanting to share with you how I sleep trained Ellie and also how I got rid of her dummy at 6 months old. So depending on how long this video is, it may be a 2-part video, but otherwise I'll try and get everything in the one. So when Ellie was 8 weeks old, I started to think that I might start a routine, more of a nighttime routine. The daytime I wasn't too concerned about at this point, but for nighttime I really wanted to establish day and night for her, as I know it takes a little while for babies to recognise day and night. So I thought, well, alright. So I researched a few different routines for that age, just basic routines for a nighttime. So basically the routine that we went with was bath, bottle, and then bed. I just felt it suited us, and you know, I thought, well, can't really go wrong with a bath, bottle, and bed. And so I gave it a go when she was 8-9 weeks old. Basically, Ellie was still in her bassinet in our room, I think until about 11 or 12 weeks old. We did, after we changed her from her bath, I would give her her bottle in our room. So I would close the blinds, make it all nice and dark for her, give her the bottle. She was in that stage where she was still falling asleep with the bottle, which was really, you know, it's easy at that stage. So you know that once you put them down, they're going to just still stay asleep majority of the time. So then after her bottle, I'd lay her down, I would swaddle her as well. We always wrapped her and swaddled her up for bedtime and also her naps, but I'm just focusing on the nighttime sleeping. Once I would lay her down, I would put some music on and then I would just leave the room. Now if she woke up say 20 minutes later or an hour later, because she was using the dummy, so I would then put the dummy in, and then if she was still awake at this point, I'd put my hand very lightly on her chest and I would just hush to her. Now what I would do, I would watch her eyes. So once she started to drift off, what I would do, I would lightly take my hand off her chest, still hushing to her. Now, and I think every parent would have done this at some point, I would get on my hands and knees and crawl out of the room so she didn't see me leave. And I would hush, still hushing, while crawling out of the room, still hushing as I closed the door, and very quietly walked away. And that was how I handled it. So I wanted Ellie, look, some may think it's too early, but I wanted Ellie to start to kind of learn to get to sleep on her own. Obviously she was still very young, and you know, I dealt with what she needed necessarily. Obviously, you know, she was still feeding quite a lot, so I knew the cues. I knew, you know, you just know as a mum, you just know when the right time is to do something. I remember we followed that routine. Then, as I said, about 11 or 12 weeks, it was just before she was 3 months old, we moved her into her room, in her cot. Now, we always had the monitors on, the sound and movement monitor by Angel Care. I found that to be so comforting, that monitor, and I think a lot of parents find it to be really comforting as well. So I always had that on. Still using the same techniques, but because Ellie was now in a cot, we put musical mobiles on her cot now, whereas her bassinet, I couldn't find one that attached to a bassinet. With the cot, I would put a nice musical one that spun around. It was, it had battery, it was battery operated, so I didn't have to worry about, you know, the twist, you know, the manual ones where you just twist it and then it just doesn't sleep. I would, if she was awake, after we placed her into her cot, after her bottle for the night, put the mobile on, put her dummy in, she was fine, then we would just quietly leave the room. And then again, if she woke up quite soon after, we would, either myself or my husband, we would put we would put our hands on her chest very lightly and just hush to her until she was settled, and we would leave the room. Still, Ellie was maybe feeding about twice during the night, so again, I just knew when she was crying what the cry was for. Now, I was finding between the 3-month and 6-month mark, I was getting up to Ellie about 10 times a night. Now, she was still asleep, but she was crying because her dummy had fallen out. Ellie hadn't found her way to find the dummy in her cot. I tried different techniques of, scattering a few different dummies in the cot, but I didn't really like that idea. I was just paranoid and I didn't know if that was really safe, so I would line up all the dummies on her dresser, so whenever she cried because her dummy had fallen out, if I couldn't find the one that was in her cot, I'd get another one, put it in. But some nights this was happening like 10 times, and before she was 6 months, it got to a point where I was like, okay, I think I need to do something about this. Now, I researched a lot on how to get rid of the dummy. There was either just going cold turkey altogether, or you do it bit by bit. And I couldn't do it cold turkey, not straight away, but the way I did it was I worked on it for a few days and then I went cold turkey. So how I went about this, as I said, I did a lot of research on it, and it's personal opinions. I could have waited till she was 1 year or 2 years old, that way I could explain it to her, or they said, look, the longer you leave it, then the more they get attached to it. And I thought, I love the dummy because it was an instant soother for her. But this was getting to the point where I'm like, oh, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. And I was determined. The thing I read up was, once you start, you have to complete the process, because if you go back and give them the dummy, all your hard work has gone out the window and your baby just thinks, oh, and it confuses them. How I went about it was, I remember it was a Thursday, and what I did was I started it during her nap time. So during her naps, I would put her in, put her music on. So Ellie associated music with sleep. Sorry, that was another thing I needed to point out with how I sleep trained, was associating music with sleep. Also associating, I was putting her in those sleeping bags by 6 months because she was rolling over. So by this point I was associating sleep with sleeping bags and her music. So what I would do, I would put her dummy in, I'd let her settle herself, let her watch the mobile, let her settle. I'll go back into her room, and just as she was just about to nod off, so her eyes were just closing and her sucking was slowing down, I'd take her dummy out very slowly. That way she fell asleep without the dummy. Was how I went about it. If she cried when I was doing that, what I would do, I'd put the dummy back in, wait till she settled, take it out again. So that was how I managed to do it, and it seemed to work for us. Obviously there was ups and downs because they're so attached to a dummy, and then all of a sudden you're just starting to take it away. So we did have a few little hiccups, but you know what, that technique was really working well for us. So then for the night time, we did it for the night time too. The same thing. Put her to bed after her bath bottle, put her to bed with the dummy in. Then as soon as she was about to nod off, we would take this, very slowly take the dummy out. Then if she stayed asleep while doing that, we would then just obviously then leave the room and presto. So, but of course, she was waking up a little bit more often because, like we do, we wake up, during our sleep. So she was wanting that dummy. So what I would do is I would go into her room, I would put the dummy in, then I would wait again, and then I would just slowly take the dummy out of her mouth and repeat. Now, be warned, you will have a few restless nights. This is just part of the process of getting rid of a dummy. Some kids may be perfectly fine with it, but I think a lot of children, you know, it's going to be, just expect a few restless nights. I followed this process until, so it was a Thursday, and then on the Monday, I thought, right, I'm just going to go cold turkey, start of the day. I was determined, and, you know, this was all trial. Of course, half of me was thinking, oh, she's too young, or I thought, you know what, is there ever going to be a good time? So that's why I thought, let's just give it a go and we'll see how far we get. Now, by going cold turkey, now I was always one that I didn't really want to try the cried out method. I was always like, no, I can't let her cry, but you know what? With this, I felt I just had to give it a go, and I knew we were going to have a very, you know, a sleepless night. The first day we're going cold turkey, I thought, yeah, we're gonna just have a sleepless night. It's gonna be a bad day. You know, this is just how it's gonna happen. So the Monday came and there was no dummy at all. From what I remember, because it was about 7 months ago now, from what I remember, her naps were fine. She coped quite well. Again, you've got to try and use other soothing techniques for your baby. You're giving away that dummy that's soothing to them. You need to find alternatives to comfort them. Again, I would put her musical mobile on and her white noise. I'd comfort her by putting my hand on her chest and just hushing to her, and that would settle her. So the night time came, and by this point I'm like, okay, well, she's had a whole day without having the dummy, and she's had 3 days prior to kind of getting used to sleeping without it. Putting her to bed was actually quite good. I believe, from what I remember, she fell asleep at the bottle, and we put her to bed with the music on. She was in a sleeping bag, and then we walked out. Now that was going really well, and by 6 months, I think she was just on 1 bottle a night. What we did was, so I think I'd either given her a bottle already, can't quite remember, but it was at a point where I knew it was too early for a bottle because she just had one, or it was along the lines of that. So she woke up crying, and I went in, comforted her, put the music on, hushed her, putting my hand on her chest, just making her feel like there's that bit of just that weight, and you know, it's just nice to have that bit of comfort there. So then I walked out of the room. Now, the way I did the cried out was, and I like this idea of it, and I think this is how it's supposed to go anyway. So after I walked out of the room, naturally she cried. So I, you know, leave it for 30 seconds to a minute. I know I only left it for 30 seconds, but I let her cry for 30 seconds. You go back in and you comfort them, and then you walk out of the room, but you extend the time. So instead of 30 seconds, say I'd leave her crying for a minute. When that minute was up, I'd go in, comfort her, and you keep extending that time. And I think there's a maximum time that you're to do it for. I think, someone quote me if I'm wrong, but again, on the top of my head, I think it's like 6 minutes or something like that. Like, it's not, it might be longer, but I know I didn't want to leave her crying for that long, or it was like maybe maximum 10 minutes. So you just keep extending the time, going in, comforting them, then going back out of the room again. And for us it worked. It took all up, from start to finish, it was under an hour. Now that may seem a long time, but I think that was pretty good. So that was me going in, comforting her, going out of the room, going back in, going, you know, so it was me following that routine, and Ellie picked it up. So since that day, we've had no dummies, and it's been 7 months now since I've given her a dummy, and Ellie has handled the crying out method very well. And I'll have to say, to this day, when Ellie is, when I put Ellie down for her nap, all we do is we put her sleeping bag on, the music, so the same thing, we've kept the same sleep associations with her. The sleeping bag, the music, and we give her a kiss, a hug, and then we just put her in the cot, and then we walk out. Naturally, again, she cries, but for a very small amount of time, and then she falls asleep on her own. Since giving away the dummy, she's now using her thumb as a comfort, which I'm completely fine with, because I gave away her dummy at 6 months old and now she's using her thumb. So for me, that's fine. And she uses her thumb when she's really tired or when she's going to bed. So that is basically how I sleep trained Ellie and got rid of the dummy. You must, when you're wanting to do a nighttime routine, you need to, now I'm no professional at all, but from the research I've done, I know that you need to have sleep associations. So for us it was the music and it was the sleeping bag, but when she was a little baby it was getting swaddled and wrapped. And for your nighttime routine, you know, bath, bottle and bed. So Ellie knows it's nighttime because she has a bath and she has a bottle and then she's in bed and she's good to go. So on the rare occasion of a nighttime, she just takes forever to settle, but that's because she's either teething or something else is bothering her. Any questions for me, please leave them in the comments down below. Get them answered for you. So this was quite a big topic for me, and because it was, you know, I started a long time ago with Ellie for a sleep routine and how I sleep trained her. I may have forgotten, you know, a few things, but what I talked about today was just basically the essential on how I sleep trained Ellie and how I got rid of the dummy as well. If you found this video to be helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Hopefully I haven't left anything out, so if I have, leave me any questions you have down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!